You're listening to Cubicle the CEO, episode 255. We're rounding up our 8 best tips and guest insights on all things hiring, from pre-hiring essentials to successful delegation to finding the right people to bring on your team. I'll introduce each soundbite with the name of the guest and the original episode number in case you want to go back and listen to the full interview. All referenced episodes will also be linked for you in the show notes below for easy access. Tip number 1 is from Say Gabriel, episode 93. Drowning in work but not sure which tasks should come off your plate first or who to hire for support? Here's how to determine which tasks you should delegate when making your first hire. I do want to ask, for when you were making, let's say, your first hire, how did you know which items to delegate first? Was it the things that you really just didn't enjoy doing? And advice would you give to people who are delegating for the first time to make sure that they can actually delegate with confidence, knowing that the task will get done as well as they want it to be done?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So that's an amazing question, and actually kind of like 3 or 4 questions. So feel free to reel me in if I go too far down a rabbit hole here. But I'll be the first to say that this has been an ongoing process. Like my first hire, I can speak to how I made that decision then, but the moral of the story is that was not a good approach. Don't do that. Because I made the mistake that so many people do, which is I kind of assumed on some level that like everyone was like me, I guess, and that I really just had to like figure out what I needed done, hire someone, and then they would kind of just be able to pick it up and go if they had the right qualifications.
Right.
And the fact is that even speaking from, and I don't want to scare anybody, but speaking from a perspective of, multiple 6 figures and many years later and having a really strong system, we brought in possibly the best account manager I could ever have hoped to get about a year ago. And it still took 3 to 6 months for her to kind of get up to speed, because even though she was really good at what she did and how to do it in my business are not the same thing. Yeah. And so I guess there's kind of 2 key things to be aware of at first that I think are really strongly mindset things. But since mindset is such a tough one and it kind of flows throughout, I just really like to kind of start with these. The first is control, which is that, as a solopreneur who's wearing all the hats, especially in that first initial grind/climb, if you're like me and you try hiring people you do know, including perhaps your mom, then there can be separate challenges there. But not that, I know people who work with their mom quite wonderfully, but, I didn't hire her because she had any good fit. I hired her because it seemed convenient and I loved her and trusted her, and that's great. But again, not the right basis for whether she's a fit for what I need at this moment in this role.
Right.
But starting off with that control thing. So just being aware that it's going to be scary, it's going to be uncomfortable, and you need to get over that in yourself first. This idea that you can do it better than anyone, so therefore you should just do it. And yeah, you may be doing something better than anyone else in your company, especially when you're first bringing people on. But if you're burnt out, you're not good at anything because you are incapable of fully functional.
Oh, that's
right?
So good.
People forget
Hear
that.
it again.
People forget
Yes.
that. Oh my gosh. And the first piece is control. The second piece is not hiring someone to be God or to do everything. Where, as someone who's used to wearing all the hats, who's super multifaceted, it was very weird for me at first to think of my business, even when it was just me, as a series of like silos or systems that had different kind of purposes. And I also fell into the mistake, and to give you some idea, that first part-time contractor that I hired, like a virtual assistant, I went through something like 8 of them in the first year or 2. And the person that I finally found who was really amazing, I actually ended up becoming a fellow leader, and we had to go through the process again for someone else. Why? Because that person who can wear all the hats and do everything is so rare that if, like me, you find that person, then they're probably not going to be that part-time contractor that often is a person's first hire. So those are the 2 mindset pieces. Just be prepared to have realistic expectations. You're going to have to fight your need for control. And you cannot hire a single person that will just do all of the things that you can't do, don't want to do, don't need to do. All right. So you got those out of the way. Now, how do you approach it? So it really starts with understanding your business as a big system. And no matter what your business is, no matter what your model is, there's always 3 main buckets. in a business, I've found. And those are sales and marketing, operations and projects, and admin and finance, right? One is the forward facing. How do we find people who have a problem that we can solve and get them to spend money in a way that's mutually profitable and valuable? Then we have actually, how do we deliver that thing? And then we have, okay, behind the scenes, what stuff, including processing the money and tech and stuff, needs to happen behind the scenes. So immediately by thinking in terms of those boxes, I think makes things a lot simpler and clearer, because it's tempting to want to hire another one of you. But other than the God thing that I already talked about, the key thing to kind of be aware of is that usually you can really just, now this is an arbitrary number, but I don't think that it's too far out there. You can like 10x your results, or at the very least double your results, by hiring not someone who's exactly good at the same stuff that you are, but someone who has complementary skills.
Tip number 2 is from Emily Reagan, episode 252. Emily walks us through the pre-hiring checklist every business owner should use to prepare for a successful hire. We also discuss the differences and merits between hiring a full-time employee versus a contractor and how to decide which is right for you. Talk to us about, even before we get to like who the right first hire is, let's talk about how a business owner can prepare themselves to even be ready to take on a team member and to hire. What is your hire preparation process?
I love this question because it will solve all the problems that come later that I'm sure we'll talk about when we're not happy with our current hire and how to get back on the happy path. But the first thing you can do, because we don't always have the budget to just hire the whole content team and all the makeup artists, right? We need to be smart. And so that time audit, being aware of what you're spending your time on, is really important. And it's not just all of the things that need to be done. It's also the things that you don't enjoy, the things that are waiting till Friday at 4 p.m. that you wait to the last minute in your drudgery zone to complete. But it's also creating awareness about the task and the things that will actually move the needle, like at the beginning here. So we need to be aware of what will save us time and what will make us money. And in some cases, it makes sense to go all in with a specialist who will help us hit our main goal and make money. An ads manager is a really good one on here. You know, you had Nikki on the show talking about like the performance of her ads, and that is something that you do want to trust somebody to do because you know it will make money. But we're not all of us are in that spot. It's not the goal for everybody. So that time audit will help. And a lot of business owners don't really have that awareness, but it will tell you what are the chunks of things that I'm spending time on that I could offload, because we have to think about our dream business. Where do we want to be? And when we're at capacity, what are the first things we need off our plate? And start moving toward that now, even if it's very slow, because you need to be prepared in hiring and delegation. Like getting that clarity and those clear roles on your team, it does take time. So I would start with the time audit. And then another thing we have to talk about, we can't skip this part, is the very sexy SOPs, right? The standard operating procedures. Being able to bring someone on your team, you might not have the most perfect onboarding process, but being able to say like, here, this is how I'm doing things now, so that they have direction and they know where to really start and plug themselves in, so they are not a burden to you. They can actually take things off your plate.
That is the one thing that if I could go back in time, I think, and change anything about my business, it would have been starting to document those SOPs from day one. It would have made everything else so much easier. For you, Emily, having worked with so many different business owners and now also running a very successful business yourself, what's your general take on contractors versus employees? Do you lean one way or the other, and why?
Ooh, I love it. I love it. I think most of us are in that place, that starting place to bring on the contractors and start small, because it takes time to grow that part of your business. And then as you're making more money, you will see people shift into the employee zone. I feel like we have to talk about that because a contractor has to show up with skills in your business. You do not train them. You give them a tour of your business and you expect them to get to work. Contractor has a contract. You don't want to get in trouble with the IRS. And you can't require them to be at weekly meetings. You can't require them when they have to work. There's all these little nuances to the contractor space. So if you do probably have, that that general need that you were talking about, it might make more sense to get an employee. But if you're seeing more specific carved out little buckets that you can pass on, I like to start smaller with contractors and test them out. But here's the thing, not everybody wants to become an employee either. But there's so many little nuances here. Is there's no right or wrong. But what I don't want people to do is run out and feel like they immediately have to get an employee and overextend themselves and not have the budget. All the things you talked about, benefits, 401ks, like figuring that out, like we might not be at that level yet, and that's okay.
Tip number 3 is from Rachel Harris, episode 223. Imagine having a giant wait list of qualified prospective employees who are eager to fill any new job opening at your company. Rachel shares how she's avoided over £100,000 in recruitment agency fees and the stress of last-minute hiring by creating a waitlist process that attracts top talent to her firm on an ongoing basis. So you already referenced that you saved £100,000, give or take, in recruitment fees by basically being an attractive company to work for and not having to go through a recruitment agency in order to recruit and attract talent to your firm. But I'm wondering, you said you did this to get ahead of a scaling issue. What was the scaling issue in your business? Was it that you had too many clients and not enough staff essentially to serve and deliver these, counting needs to your clients? Was it something different? How did you anticipate going in that you would need to hire, and how early, like how much further ahead are you hiring in anticipation of your needs?
So from the point of recording today, I am recruited, as in I have got accountants who've accepted job offers and are waiting to hand their notice in as far ahead as 6 months. And so I've got 2 or 3 people at any given time that have been interviewed, have come into the office, have met the team, and have accepted job offers, but maybe just have 4 weeks notice. And so we just stay in open contact because now we're 3 years in, now that we've got such a strong pipeline, it's literally like a tap that I can turn on and off. So we quote on average £110,000 of new work into the business every single month at the moment. So I can literally forecast, right, I'm going to need a new accountant there, a new accountant there. For every 2 accountants, I need a new administrator. For every 5 accountants, I need a new manager. I can literally place the roles as far ahead. And then through sort of building great relationships with people, having open conversations with people. We've actually just pulled one forward because we've made an internal promotion. And so we have that flexibility. It's like playing chess at all times. But yeah, from the very beginning, once social media took off and we had this huge volume of inquiries, we very quickly identified that we were either going to have to open the doors to new clients, close them, hire, train, onboard, and then do the whole thing again, which is very clunky. It's quite stop-start from an admin perspective. And I was actually on my honeymoon with James, and I was really like reflecting about my job and my role. And I thought, what bit of the business stresses me out the most? And it was recruitment. You only ever recruit when you're either over capacity or in a very stressful situation because maybe someone's left that you didn't want them to, or there's been a bit of HR drama and someone's left. You're generally only ever recruiting under stress and time pressure. And actually, fundamentally, that can make you make decisions that you wouldn't normally make. It can make you overlook things in candidates that you wouldn't normally do. And also, in 2023, I still believe candidates who are looking for a new job, nobody talks about how much of a huge life decision changing jobs is. And so to be able to remove time and be very transparent about the role, get them to come in and meet the team, we buddy everybody up with somebody who is either doing their role or in a similar sort of life situation to them. So if it's a parent, actually, I would want to have the founders leave the room, which me and James do. We buddy them up and they get to have a real conversation. Like, okay, I know they say it's flexible working, but what if my child's sick? Can I go? And so we buddy them up, we leave the room, we let them have like a real open, spill the tea sort of conversation with another member of staff, especially to avoid any like Instagram versus reality. We have a following, we share a lot of content behind the scenes, but actually, is that real? Am I going to turn up and Rachel has a resting bitch face? I don't know. I just want to check that. And so by encouraging all of those open conversations, by getting people lined up, actually we've been able to avoid any sort of, like we've been able to keep that consistency, but also say to members of staff who are thinking about accepting a job offer, when you take time out of it, people just make better decisions. And an unexpected benefit of the waiting list is FOMO. I've got 149 people waiting to join my firm. What are you missing out on? But also for the team know that there are 149 people waiting to take that seat. And so the sort of like culture, camaraderie, the like, this is us, this is where we're going. You don't get on a bus if you don't know where it's going. So we have like hugely strong culture, core values. We know the direction that we are taking the business, and that really bonds the team. And again, like as we've grown, nobody teaches you how to recruit. I certainly was not taught how to recruit. We get better with every single hire. We get better. So the day I'm recording this, we actually just had a member of staff who is joining in 2 weeks' time just come in for lunch. Like, she's quit her job. She's got a 2-week break. She just came in to play some board games. We're currently filming a Great British Bake Off TikTok series, so she baked some cake for us.
That's so awesome. I love the creativity of your brain. It's so fun for me to sit here and listen to how you think about, I don't even want to call them problems, just the things that you have to go through as you grow your business. And I really love what you said about removing time from the equation. I think that's a really unique perspective of, if time were not a factor, how would that change your decisions that you make as a business owner and on the employee side too, like you said? I just kind of want to better understand the timing of things then. So the 149 person wait list, it seems like recruitment is almost an ongoing practice in your business, right? Because you're removing time from the equation. And it's not like if someone is determined a good fit for your business or has accepted a job offer that they need to immediately transition into your business. So understanding that built-in flexibility, I have 2 questions. First, for the wait list of 149 people, how do you determine the order of the wait list? Is it based on, like, I guess like early bird, right? Like first come, first serve, where if they're earliest to the table and you've had a conversation, that they are first in line to get the next available job, or is order determined differently? That's my first piece of the question. The second question is for those who have already been given job offers and have accepted job offers, but have not yet quit their current job. How long do you allow for that transition period? Is there a maximum where it's like within, 90 days, you need to have left your current job to come work here? Or is it kind of unlimited? Like they could take 9 months from the time they accept their job offer for you to actually bring them in?
So we basically triage people as they join the waiting list. So I get an email notification. Also, just for context, if you're a CEO listening to this, it is completely free. It's a Google form that I made. I am thrifty, and if there is a way to do it for free, I do it for free. So it's literally just a Google form with some questions. People can tick a box to tell me if they are passively or actively looking for a job. Just for context, I'm a bit of a data nerd. Obviously, I'm an accountant, but 85% of people that join the waiting list are passively looking for a job. So they're not time sensitive. And I've interviewed multiple people who, when I say, why are you looking to leave your current employer, say, but I'll leave to come and work for you. And so again, like branding, culture, all of that feeds into it. So the majority of people aren't time sensitive. If they are, we will chat to them as fast as possible. So as soon as people join the waiting list, assuming that it's somebody passive looking for a job, we do blind recruitment so that we're removing any bias. So all names, locations, they do have to be within a commutable distance to us. They come into the office 1 day a week, but we do blind recruitment to just remove any bias. And so we do a quick sort of skills check. We look at exactly where they would sit from a technical perspective, and then we'll reach out to them to let them know the next role that we've got coming up is in X months' time. Does that work for you? Would you be open to sort of start a conversation with us on that basis? Or would you rather us reach out closer to the time and when it's sort of a bit more relevant? 9 times out of 10, people come back and just want to chat to you straight away. So we interview them, we do skills tests, we get them to come in, meet the team. And so we actually have like 3 different stages of interview. Then we make the offer. Once they've accepted the offer, again, we just tell them that we prioritize open communication. We have a pretty consistent pipeline of new work, but sometimes we can win huge jobs. Sometimes we have to disengage with clients and that can drop the pipeline. So we prioritize open communication, and it's very much led by us and them. So the person who came in for lunch today, that was somebody that we actually pulled forward because she could start sooner. But we made a job offer just with the start date as to be confirmed. And she was going to start in February. So she was pre-dated for February. We made an internal promotion. And so we actually reached out and said, would you be happy to start sooner? And she said yes. And so we drafted up a contract and then she resigned. So For both of us, a job offer is very much just our intention to provide an offer. And then by the time it gets to, we're sort of saying, oh, we would actually like for you to start in the next sort of 6-7 weeks. What does your notice period look like? Can you resign? That's when we'll send them a contract. But again, like James and I are very like heart-led people. Like I would never make someone a job offer if I had no intention of sort of like honoring it. And so before people are resigning, they get a full contract. But up until that point, we just make them a job offer to just let them know the salary, the benefits package, their job title, what the role's going to look like. But again, we're scaling so rapidly that we can normally look at, by the time I interview someone, I can say the next opening in your department is going to be in probably 6 months' time. Does that work for you? And again, I do think there is something, recruitment and jobs are so disruptive to our lives, but nobody says like, take your time. Like genuinely think about if this is something that you can do. Think about what your priorities are. We are scaling, but we're still quite small. And so that could mean that there is an opportunity for you to develop into a manager in 12 months' time, but it could also mean that something changes and it's a little bit longer. And so I'd say me and James sort of swing to the being brutally pessimistic with people to manage their expectations and say like, this is incredibly exciting, but it's also really hard and you will get out what you put in. And like, this is the standard that we work at. And so I hope that answered both of your questions.
Tip number 4 is from Tyler J. McCall, episode 123. Tyler gives heed to the dangers of hiring too quickly. In the industry, there's often this pressure to, especially in the online marketing industry, I would say, there's a lot of pressure that, hey, if you reach a certain revenue point, you need an integrator, you need this, you need that. And it's like, I think sometimes people prematurely hire those roles and they don't know why they're even hiring them. It's just because it's what they've been told to do, so to speak.
Yeah. And I think there's a really dangerous trend in online business of a dangerous trend of lifestyle elevation, lifestyle outpacing income. I see that very often. And I would be curious about, you seeing that in your own business, right? The person that has their first 10K month, which is incredibly exciting and an incredible achievement. And then unfortunately elevates their lifestyle to match that income within that same month. And there's so much risk associated with that because you have to continue to repeat that income, if you're elevating the lifestyle. And on the same side, I think a lot of people are doing that in terms of business structure and team, and everyone has to do it at their own pace. And I think hiring and building a team is something that is incredibly serious business. And I think a lot of energy and effort and time and resources should go into that. It should not be done flippantly. And I recently said on Facebook, whenever I'm talking about this stuff, I'm not saying this because I think I'm better than you. It's because like I messed up and I want to share the lesson so you don't make the same mistake. I grew a team too quickly. I elevated my team structure in such a way where I could not maintain profitability in my online business because I had built this team. And because of that, it created immense stress on my business to continue in the way it was structured. Mm-hmm. And then I had to make the difficult decision to downsize my team. That is an incredibly huge decision. And I've never taken like having someone on my team lightly because I always think like we're paying someone's light bill, like this is very serious. And I just don't want other people to make that same mistake, to grow a team too quickly, to grow too large of a team too quickly. And I would imagine that most people listening to your podcast, Ellen, are like good, kind, thoughtful people. And the last thing we would want to do is like, sorry, there's lots of honking going on. So apologies for the city noise.
This is real life, guys. It is totally fine.
Of course, I'm on my soapbox and there's a honking car and there's an ambulance going by. Oh my gosh.
I hope everyone's okay.
Yeah. Anyway, just, I don't know, take it seriously. And it's just like, I think it's a big deal. I think it's a really big deal.
Tip number 5 is from Heather Brown, episode 195. Need support but not ready to invest a large sum towards growing your team? Heather makes the case for why interns are a valuable team addition. Her own company saw a revenue increase of 45% in the first 5 months of hiring help. I want to go back real quick to this point that you made earlier about your interns, because I feel like that's the part of your team building that's most interesting to me in this case study. I don't think any of our past guests who have come on to talk about team building or how they've grown their business through their team necessarily leverage internships to the level that you do.
Mm.
So you mentioned that when you bring on interns, typically they're staying with you for a term of 3 to 6 months. And then some of them, obviously, you have hired on as paid staff once they've kind of, I guess, graduated their internship. These days, are you still bringing on a new intern like every term or every, school year? And is it always with the intention that if they're a great culture fit and a great role fit, that they have the opportunity to receive a paid job offer after? Or is it not necessarily stated as an intention at the front end, but you're maybe making those offers when it makes sense to? Like how does your thought process around the internship role play in your business today in 2023?
So that's a really great point that you brought up, because I do think that back in, I would say 2019, 2020, 2021, even, that was my intention. Like, I want to bring on an intern every 3 to 6 months. And if they're great, I want to hire them on. And I would even say that up front a lot of times. I ended up actually having so many great interns that I was like, I don't want to get out over my skis and hire too many people. So then I did have to scale back and be like, okay, I now have, it's kind of crazy. I'm thinking about it. 4 of the ladies on my team that work for me, either part-time or full-time now, started out as interns, and they're still here years later.
That's
So
so cool.
it's super cool. And so I quote this in my course about team building, but I say having a team who fully believes in and supports your mission is life-changing, and where you see true growth and success. And I still fully believe in that. Now, I will say in 2022 and 2023, I feel like we have slowed down a little bit, just because we want to be mindful of where the economy is going. And we know that there are things that have been said by people at JP Morgan and really, high ups about potentially what the economy could look like. So we have slowed our hiring for sure. And I would say that I'm not actively looking for interns right now, because I'm having to almost like box in a little bit more and just be precautious overall with just how we're spending our time and resources. Because even though the interns start out for free, I'm still having to pay my other employees to train them and bring them under their wing. So I'm hoping that next year we can get back to bringing back on interns and be a little less cautious, I guess, or conservative in the market. Yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now. But I'm super thankful for the women that started as interns. And I still go back to Sanford sometimes when I'm looking for an intern. Or what I've been doing more recently is posting in Facebook groups, either in my neighborhood or even on my Instagram stories, like saying, if you're interested, please don't DM me. You don't have to be local, or you do, whatever the case is at that time. Please fill out this Google form to apply. And then that way it allows me to get to know a little bit more of a snapshot of who they are. If they can fill the hole I have, I'll start out by saying it's unpaid. But if I see someone that I'm like, ooh, actually, like, we need a graphic designer and this girl has that skill, then I'll hire her spot on from that form.
That's amazing. So essentially the people who kind of start in those unpaid internship roles are typically, I guess, not specialized to a specific skill set like graphic design. They're kind of coming on as a blank slate, and you are investing the time and the resources to train them in I'm assuming, a wide variety of skill sets. And then the ones who are a good fit culturally may stay on as paid team members. I love that half your team started out as an intern. I really do think that's so unique. And I hope this serves as inspiration for others listening who maybe have not ever tried that route of, bringing on an intern that then grows into a paid team member. But I mean, it's worked really well for our business as well. And so I can definitely see the merit in that. I do want to ask you a hot take on this, because you brought up a great point that even if in those first few months, the intern may not necessarily be adding to your budget expenses, you are still having to pay for your current team's labor and time to train them. And if the average intern, let's say, stays 3 to 6 months and doesn't transition into being a paid team member, essentially the time, the money that you've invested in them kind of goes away once they leave your business, right? So if you're playing devil's advocate here, someone on the outside listening in might think, well, that kind of is not that different from if you actually did hire a paid team member, train them, and then they left your company. It kind of models that high turnover rate. So my hot take question for you is, knowing that there is going to be that high turnover built into this model, why choose to still go with interns versus just hiring paid staff members outright up front?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think for me, there's a lot of women and moms in my community that I know either are doing MLMs or they are wanting to become a blogger or those type of things. And I will say that I think probably at least 5 of my interns that have come through have gone on to become bloggers themselves, or they were baby bloggers and now they're able to monetize. And so to me, it feels like a little bit of a way that I can give back to my community and to pour into and invest in women who want to be entrepreneurs and or just want to invest in learning more for their family, bettering their side hustle income. And so to me, it's something that I love coaching women in social media and in blogging. And so it provides a way for me to get to scratch that itch. But also in the past, I have not had the bandwidth to offer professional, like I took away my consulting option for a while. I brought it back in the past year, but that was my outlet to get to still like hear what questions people were having and still to stay up on like, what are the trends they're wondering about? Can I still serve that audience? So that's my hot take, but I would love to hear your thoughts on that. What do you think, Ellen?
I love that your hot take is it's a vehicle for mentorship. That's such a beautiful perspective. I think it's a personal thing for me because I got my start in my career as an intern. And I think there's just so much value in getting real practice in a business and getting to do things that you can't learn in a textbook. So I realize for you, as your business has evolved, some of your internship roles have gone to, like you said, mothers in your community who may not necessarily be in that college stage of life. But for us, the interns that we've hired on our staff, and granted, there's only been 2 so far, but they have both been college students at the time that they were, hired. And even with our current intern, actually, we, offer us a paid stipend now in addition to the credit hours that they earn through their college. So it looks a little bit different these days for us, but I feel the same as you, Heather. It's such an amazing way to mentor and pour into someone who's at this stage in their life where their career is just starting potentially. And I think it's such a beautiful thing to see the transformation and personal growth that someone goes into over their time working with you beyond just professional growth. Tip number 6 is from Dana Trout, episode 168. If you're a scrappy products-based business or direct-to-consumer brand, Dana's success with scaling her wholesale team on a budget proves why Craigslist is the winning recruitment strategy no one's talking about. Dana walks us through the exact process of finding, training, and paying her independent sales reps. I think it's cool that you went into this business already having a really strong background in people building and team building. And so how cool that you recognize the limitations of what the 3 of you could really do in terms of making movement in opening accounts. And even though you didn't have the funds to hire team members on full-time or even part-time, quite frankly, you came up with a solution to get more hands on deck. So yes, dive into your independent sales rep, scrappy Craigslist strategy.
Yeah. This was the time that like Craigslist was very popular, and we posted ads. Essentially, our strategy was we want to pay people, but we have to wait till we get paid to pay them. And so essentially, we were going to pay them commission. And we couldn't pay them until we actually received the check from the store. So the way we started out was we posted on Craigslist. We said, who loves kombucha? We'll give you a zip code. You can work your own hours, as many hours as you want. And you basically get paid for every account you open and for the number of cases you sell. And we would hold every Saturday a training session for whoever wanted to join our team. And the typical type of people that would join were people that were looking for extra work, like yoga instructors that still had some extra time, or actresses or actors that like had big hiatuses of time between gigs. And generally young, generally healthy, loved kombucha and wanted to like help out and see if they could make some extra cash this way. And there's a pro to that. They're all really passionate. They have energy. They're cool. They know the cool accounts. The downside is they're generally pretty unreliable because they move to, once they get a gig, they move on. And so we had to have these weekly training sessions because so much turnover happened. So I wouldn't say it's the easiest or simplest way. And for sure, if I had the capital, I would probably recommend hiring somebody because that's really when it starts to become dependable. But whatever, we didn't have those options, right? So We did training sessions. We gave people zip codes and we said, for every account you open, as soon as we get a check for it, and we had a minimum of 2 cases for an order, you'd get $100 to open the account. And then you'd get 10% of each case sold for as long as you manage the account. And then if you quit on us, we'll give you that 10% for 3 more months, assuming that they would continue to order based on their work, right? So that was sort of the generalized structure we came up with, and it worked. As you mentioned, within a month, we were from 10 stores to 300 stores in LA, and we were in all the cool parts. Vanessa's full-time job, that's my co-founder, her full-time job became managing these folks. So we had about 20 people at any given time walking the streets of LA. And they each had their own zip code. So that's how they didn't sort of step on each other's toes. And as soon as one would leave, we would call another Craigslist sort of meeting to bring in another. And yeah, I mean, I think overall we probably had a good 100 people working, but not at any one time. It was like 20 and then there'd be turnover. But in total, we probably trained 100.
Right. That's such a smart strategy. I'm just curious, was there any specific intention behind using Craigslist to recruit these people versus, let's say, I mean, I'm not sure what year this was, but versus social or even using a traditional job site like Monster, Indeed? Was there a strategy behind the Craigslist, or was it truly just lowest barrier to entry? You get an ad up in, 2 minutes and there we go.
Yeah, I mean, we understood this wasn't like a permanent job. So Monster felt like we weren't offering salary and benefits like many do on Monster. So it felt like we were not going to be hitting who's looking for, like, people who are just looking for like extra hours probably don't go to Monster. And at that time, Craigslist, there really weren't other forums besides Craigslist. Like Craigslist was the place you went at that time. It was 2013, to answer your question. And like that was when you needed a couch for cheap, like you went to Craigslist and got a couch. When you needed some extra hours or you needed a babysitting job, you would go to Craigslist. So it did feel like the right forum. I'm sure today there are other options, but yeah, it was strategic in that that's where people went for extra hours stuff.
That's really smart to think about user behavior on different platforms and where you are most likely to reach your target audience, which is something we talk a lot about on this show. Usually not in the sense of hiring, rather, but in your case, it worked. Tip number 7 is from Danielle Hayden, episode 254. Danielle, CEO of a 7-figure bookkeeping and accounting agency, observes that many of her clients, mostly women, are actually guilty of underspending in their businesses, despite often believing the opposite about their money habits. Danielle shares her own ROI from spending $113,223 in outsourced services for her business to encourage others to reevaluate how their own expenditure may be stunting growth. So in 2022, you invested about $21,600 on PR agency costs, and you got a 10x return on that investment. In 2023, you spent similar amount, $22,000. You got a 7x return. And then this year, so far, you've invested $10,000 in those PR pitching services, and you've gotten a 5x return so far. My question to you is, when you're looking at a strategy that does have a direct measurable revenue ROI, like, okay, you booked me on 5 shows and, each one brought me 1 lead and then, maybe 2 turned into clients. When it comes to things like that, how big of an ROI are you looking for to even give the green light to spending on that strategy in the first place? So not talking about internal versus external, but just for you to green light the initiative, what ROI are you looking for on these types of strategies?
So my answer has changed through the years. When we started this strategy back in 2019, the ROI was much lower, right? I was finding my voice. I didn't know what I was saying yet. I needed to learn. We were on smaller shows. And over the years, I've gotten a level of comfort in speaking, in knowing that regardless of the ROI, that I am here to serve, right? Like part of my bigger mission is to help business owners. And so if one person listening to the show receives value, I feel good about that personally, right? So this was a good personal use of my time. When I am looking at, will we continue to renew our contract with them? For us, it needs to be profitable. And this is crazy to hear from an accountant, but like, what are the softer things that it's bringing, right? So from podcasting, I have met the most incredible people. I was on a show a little over a year ago her and I we totally clicked, and I now speak monthly into her mastermind group. I'm part of her group, right? And we work with so many clients together, and the ROI of that probably isn't even captured in that number because she became a referral partner. And so the metric now is being tagged, like that revenue is being tagged to referral partner rather than podcast. But I found her from podcasting. We have another one who I met back in 2020 during the pandemic. I met her and I was on her show. She was on my show. She's become a longtime friend. She's a referral partner now. We frequently do events. She asked me to speak every year at her conference. So it is bringing new people into my world who I have the benefit of learning from you, right? Like I'm going to learn something today from you, and we might possibly continue to collaborate. And there's so much value in that. So I know that that's not a specific answer of like, how do you apply that to all areas? But it's specifically for this one. If it is taking something off of your plate significantly, if it is letting you have peace of mind and aiding you in achieving your goals, to me, that's ROI.
Yeah. And I really appreciate how you explained that, the softer side of things, the less tangible or immediate effects of a strategy implementation, because it actually sparked this new aha for me. So I wanted to share it with our listeners. I realized as you were talking about the connections that you've made and how they've played out over long-term windows of time, that you are absolutely correct in the sense that for you to have made those same connections, like with that woman who is a rock star referral partner now, or, other one that you just mentioned, where else would you have had to invest to meet those same people, like to be in the rooms with them? Like, would you have had to go to a specific conference or maybe buy a seat in a mastermind or whatever it may be, and all the costs associated with travel and your admission into that and things like that? So it's kind of like taking, that same concept. It still would have been a cost somewhere, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, even if it's not the primary reason that you decided to invest in a said strategy, but the ancillary effect still has cost efficiency there. And so I think that's a really, really interesting point that I had never thought about it that way until I heard you talking. So I just wanted to pull that out for our listeners in case that was like an aha moment for anyone else too. Tip number 8 is from Pollyanna Reed, episode 201. Pollyanna details the essential mindset switch she had to make when hiring for her 6-figure business versus hiring for her 7-figure business. Let's start with that team management piece. What do you feel like really changed in how you hired and developed your team members that was different in your 6-figure agency world versus your now 7-figure agency?
The first thing I did was that I removed myself from the process, from the hiring process. I think when you are within the 6-figure arena, you want to be besties with every employee, and you want to be, you think of it like a family. And when I made the transition, I actually got my teammates, my team members to start interviewing. Because if y'all don't like this new person, it's not going to work anyways. So I removed myself from the process because sometimes CEOs can hire off vibes. And that's not the right way to do things, right? And so for me, it was more so, not even the resume was truly important. It was, could they fit into our company culture? Technical skills I can always train you on, but I want to know if you got that fight in you, if you align with our company mission, if you're married to the mission. I want to know if you're a people person. Can you work in teams? Like, what's your personality traits? Soft skills, right? Those are really important to me. So I was the last of 3 interviews in that process. In terms of team, I look for diversity, right? So when I say diversity, I mean diversity in thought, diversity in geography, diversity in background and experience, diversity. And let me give you an example of how this helped. So Ramadan, for instance, right? I had a CEO client, white male individual, leads a $500 million company. He wanted to send a company-wide email, so spanning multiple countries, acknowledging Ramadan. And there are many other holidays and notes that he wanted to send. Now, he obviously doesn't have the cultural competency, but on my team, I have current tense, someone who is Muslim, someone who practices, someone who knows the language to use. And so for me, when I look for someone new on my team, I look for like, what blind spot can you remove from our vision? And that's really important to me. So you can have all the skills and be a phenomenal writer, but I have to cover a lot of ground so that if anyone comes to us, we're able to tackle the topic confidently. So there are people who may come to us to write their books and they may have a specific request. I want to write with one of your writers who's a mother who understands single motherhood. We have, you know what I mean? So like, I think about all of that. Sometimes we write about abuse, we talk about miscarriage, there's so many sensitive topics that we cover because we're storytelling, and it's important that I have women who have been through some shit, who have battle scars and who have risen above it. And so it helps us, because in writing, whenever you take the audience down, you want to bring them back up. And so I look for those qualities in my team members.
It's really, I think, so intentional how your team is a reflection of your clients. That may be true for other CEOs that I've interviewed, but I think you're the first to really place such an emphasis on that. And that makes sense because of the topics, like you said, that you're writing about. Having firsthand experience, having that competency, like you mentioned, is going to always feel and come across differently than someone who simply did research on a subject. Thanks for tuning in to our Best of Hiring Roundup. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you add to your Play Next queue the other Best of Roundups we've published on themes like email marketing, podcasting, launching, pitching, lead generation, conversion, customer feedback, and top out-of-the-box marketing ideas. We'll make sure to drop clickable links below in the show notes to all previous roundups or in the video description if you're watching on YouTube.